Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining, but the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Hi, I'm Jen Ross, your Agri-Tourist Podcast host. I know we've gone a bit rogue off the normal podcast schedule, and it feels kind of liberating in a strange way, but it's also given me the opportunity to reset a bit. I haven't completely figured out how I want to approach the podcast going forward, but it's given me some time back and will allow me time to test some things out as well. One of those things is doing a video edit along with the audio edit. I've avoided that mainly because of the time it takes to do all of this editing. But for some select interviews, I am going to make the time and add a video podcast to the mix. And we are going to do that for this interview. My interview with Pattie Baker, author of a few books, 2 in particular being Round America with a Duck, in which I interviewed Pattie back in episode 20, and her newest book, Round Ireland with a Duck. Pattie was a real inspiration for me when I read her Round America with a Duck book. Then we spoke, and that inspiration came alive. And then she went to Ireland and wrote a second book about her amazing experiences. These books are not just about woofing. They are about a woman who is trusting her journey. A woman who is truly present in the moment. A woman who values interactions with people she encounters at every moment of her life, taking notice of things that most people just breeze by or ignore. And throughout this journey, Pattie's personal and family challenges surface, along with hearing the extreme challenges of many of the families she resided with during her stays. When you are woofing or living and working with strangers, it reveals a lot about yourself to yourself, and it reveals a lot about the stories of the people you are spending time with. Pattie uses those experiences to really look at herself, her raw self, and has learned to truly trust the journey each and every day. Enjoy my deep dive around Ireland with Pattie Baker and her bike mascot, Disco the Duck. And don't forget to share our podcast, subscribe, and give us a review. Enjoy.
Hi.
Hi. We're not in the woods on the house.
I know. I was almost in the woods, and such a long story. I'm going to just, here I am.
Well, this is good.
Yeah, in the best case scenario here. Yes,
I love it.
We have, there's construction happening. It's 90 degrees. I mean, all kinds of impediments to, appearing reasonably.
In nature. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So I brought you to my office instead, which is my older daughter's closet, which has been repurposed as my studio, my little hiding space. So,
and I see some nice artifacts behind you. I see the word bike. I see the books.
Books. I've got, I love this. Something to spell there. Yeah, this is a non-alcoholic wine, Be Free.
Oh, nice.
Which I think is
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Excellent.
And I don't know. Here's the Celtic year.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's fun. So we've just started. We just had the fall equinox, and we're on our way to Samhain, which is Halloween. So yeah. How are you
And
doing?
actually, it's officially fall right now.
Officially
It was like
fall.
219 or something today. We left
Yeah.
summer and we're now officially in fall. And it's
Ah,
what you said, it's 90 degrees by you, and it's
it's so
probably
hot. It's in
it's
there too,
it's warm
right?
here too. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
cool in the mornings, obviously, so it still has that fall air
Right.
in the mornings and at night, but during the day it gets
I
up to
know.
summer temperatures.
So
But
the edge of the starting to break. I know. Yeah,
yes.
I planted a bunch of fall seeds a few weeks ago and they're not up at all. So that's not a good sign. I think we're not at that point yet. So
Yes.
anyway, yes,
So
yeah.
I want to jump into some questions. So I read this amazing book, Round
Oh,
Ireland with a Duck.
thank
Look
you
at
so much.
all
Yeah.
my, so I'm going to reference things. But I actually wanted to just jump in with a few questions for you first. And then
Yeah.
obviously I want to jump into the book and Ireland and all the meaning around this, because there was obviously a lot of meaningful parts of this. So trust the journey is like not just your motto or theme, it's like your brand.
Yeah.
What does
It's
that
on my ear.
mean?
It's on my ear. Yeah.
Yes, it's your tattoo. It embodies you.
Yeah.
So what does it mean? I mean, we
It-
intuitively
yeah.
know what it means, but I want to hear from you.
Right.
What does that mean when you say that, when you write that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think a lot of times when I'm saying it, it's very much, a directive to myself, to actually like, this is your next step. Your next step is actually to just trust what's going to happen next, that it's going to become clear and again, if you're in tune with your gut and you're in tune with what you're trying to manifest in the world, then you're sort of paying attention to where the signs are. And the signs come if we're listening for them. So I think it's that feeling of I go out for walks at night a lot and look at that. The moon and the stars are already up there. I did not need to hang them. We don't need to do it all. And as we're transitioning out of being, full-time caregivers to our children and, at different stages in our careers, we have that opportunity now to let the world allow us to fulfill our destinies without us feeling like we have to manage it because we don't. And that's what's been so enjoyable. And I feel like both of these journeys around America with the Duck and Ireland really forced me to do that. I was already doing that. That was already my philosophy. But now it's almost like you're riding waves. And, I know for you, your youngest just went away. And I remember intensely that feeling with both of mine when they went away. And I shared with you that we're both from Long Island and we can make the ocean reference. It's very much this feeling of these waves that are coming and they're hitting you and sometimes they knock you down. And, we know waves. We grew up by the ocean and we know you just get up again and we know some of them take you under, but you can come back up again. And I kind of feel like with Trust the Journey, that's sort of what I'm doing is I'm just sort of riding the waves
Yep.
and seeing where they take me, you know?
Where did and I know you probably discussed this in your first book. Just remind us, where did it come from? Like, where did that phrase, how
Oh
did it
no.
unearth in
Yeah.
you?
It's actually on this book. The book before these two is called
Okay.
Traveling at the Speed of Bike. And I was already living that. It says Trust the Journey right there. So
Okay.
I was
You it just
I was already living that. I don't I don't know what the genesis of that was. In all honesty, I mean, I had a really hard time with that first college transition. I had just turned 50. I lost my business. A lot was happening at once. And I just kept feeling better when I rode my bike. And every day I was just getting up being like, I don't know what this is about. But I was in Atlanta every day and the Atlanta Beltline had just started, and all these really cool, exciting things were happening in Atlanta. There was a lot of positive energy and a lot of startup energy, for a lot of art, still is, but this is kind of when it was all a renaissance of it. And it just felt right. And I was just like, okay, I don't know where we're going, but I'm on my way. so so I think it was around that time when I started
Right.
getting this feeling like I didn't really need to have the answers anymore.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, we've spent a lot of years having the answers
Yep.
or coming up with
Absolutely.
our little 3-year plans and our 5-year plans and our budgets and our this and our that. And not that we don't still need those, but those are more like just like a direction that I'm pointing now, not necessarily a set of goals.
So you mentioned biking, and I
Yeah.
know it was interesting because in the Ireland book, you talked because I know there was some struggles with trying to find
Yeah.
bikes. And
Yeah.
I know that when every morning and almost every evening as well, I walk. And
Mhm.
your biking is like my walking. It's kind of like part of who I am. I almost need it every day because it's
Mhm.
not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing, it's an
Right.
emotional thing. It settles me, it calms
Yeah.
me, it gets me ready
Mhm.
for the day. So, why biking? Like, what is, just give me a little
Yeah.
bit of history on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I grew up with that, and I think it was, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and that's what we did. There was some chaos at home at some points, and we just all went out on our bikes. And it just became a source of comfort for me, and it just never
Yep.
went away. It never left. And I think, I mean, scientifically, I think there's something about the actual revolution. And I also think with the scanning, when you're scanning left to right, it does sort of that brain massage thing. And when you walk as well, I'm sure that
Yep.
happens. But it's just, it's a freedom and it's an exploration and it's also a connection. It connects you to the land and to people and to yourself. So it's just always, I mean, to the point where I think if I almost just like did when we used to do the bicycle thing with our feet in the air, you know,
Yes.
I think I mean, I
Yes.
was getting to that point in Ireland that if I couldn't source a bike, I'm like, well, maybe that'll work. I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting, to again, if for some reason you happen to be somewhere that you just couldn't walk, like you're on some big highway or you're just somewhere that you just
Yep.
can't get your walks in, you'd go up and down the hallway, you'd go,
Oh yeah, I walked a few times when I was traveling with Abby to her tournaments. We were staying at a hotel that was on like a highway. So I would sometimes walk around the parking lot. People in the hotel would see me
yeah,
like doing 25 circles around the parking lot, but I needed it. I
right,
just I needed it. And I need to be outside as well.
right.
That treadmill thing doesn't
No, same as
inside
me.
a small room does not do it for me.
Yeah, it's just a magic that happens,
Yeah.
and I'm not in, I have no way of explaining it, it's just,
Yeah.
it
But
is,
I
it is.
felt it. I felt in your Ireland book, like I totally connected to that feeling of when you couldn't get the bike. I
Yes,
was just
I
like,
know.
oh, I felt you. I was like, I get
I
it totally.
know. It's so, and especially with the American trip, I had my folding bike with me.
Yes. Yeah, I
So,
was so surprised you did not
well,
take it.
it's challenging, it's like
Yes.
between shipping, bringing it on the plane. And there's ways to do this. And the goal is to ultimately get the, $3,000 Brompton that folds so small you can fit it in the carry-on. That's how small
Okay.
that bike folds.
Really?
And yeah, and it's
Oh,
super
wow.
light and it's kind of a miracle bike. So people who travel a lot, that's what they get. Mine
Okay.
is bigger than that. It's too big for carry on. And again, I didn't know what I was going to encounter when I got there with, buses and trains and things. And, again, you think there's going to be bikes, and folks told me they had bikes and, it all worked out. And I
Yep.
and I just kind of, again, back to trust the journey. I'm like, you know what? we're going to lean into this. This is going to be part of the adventure and it's going to be okay, you know? And it was. And I actually walked more, as you saw, especially that second
Yes.
station. And that was actually super enjoyable. So,
Excellent.
and you notice so much more, you know, or different things when you're walking.
Yep.
So that was a gift, you know, in itself.
Absolutely.
So, but I think, you know, back to, you were asking, you know, about this idea of trust the journey. I think we get to this age and we're really at the I mean, the book opens, I'm on the edge of a cliff. I think we are all at the edge of a proverbial cliff. And, you know, there's a saying, I think, you know, just leap and you'll grow wings, or your cape will appear, those kinds of things. I think that's where we're at collectively. And we just need to make that decision. And once that decision's made, you have no choice but to trust.
Exactly.
And you don't have control over it anymore. I mean, what you end up having control over is your attitude, you know, and your ability to be like, okay, anything that happens here is a gift. I'm going to meet somebody. I mean, nice things always happen, you know. Yeah, I mean, you're in a train depot, bus depot, whatever, or you're stranded or something goes wrong. And then something nice always happens. Always. You always meet somebody. It's always a gift, you know. So I think that's been helpful to to remember.
But Patty, one thing like I love in your book is that you take note of those gifts, because a lot of us are so busy in our lives and we have an interaction, but we don't always take note of that interaction. You know, yes, like you say in the book, it's like you meet that person, you may never see them again, and you kind of noted that interaction. And I think that's so important for us to do, is to
Right.
take note of those small little interactions that had some meaning. I remember in the book you met that I think it was a woman or a young girl who was going to was she going camping or hiking in
Oh yeah, on the
South
train.
America? Yeah, yes, yes. And I
Yes, on
remember
the
you.
train in New
Yes,
York on the Long Island
yes,
Railroad.
yep.
Yes.
I think that's why I
Yeah,
remember
on the
that
way to
one.
like the cloud forest, you
Yes,
know.
yes. And she
We're
had
like at
she never camped before or hiked
nothing.
before,
I
and
know. I know. Well, I think it's gotten to this to point with me where I have tried to, and I've gotten kind of successful at this, of eliminating so much from my life, because these little in between moments have actually become my life. Like they're not my in between moments anymore. They're the things I'm actually looking for in the course of a day now. Like they're not the filler anymore. They're the life, because the other stuff, you know, is just not, it doesn't have the same importance, or not that it doesn't have the same importance or value, but this has stepped up into a bigger way in my life now. So when I go out, like if I'm going now to the supermarket, I ride my bike, it's 1 mile. I know something good is going to happen. I'm going to meet somebody along the way. I'm going to have some kind of interaction, you know, because I usually bring my bike into the store and that usually spurs some conversation. Something good is going to happen. And that's a really exciting feeling, you know, to get up every day and go, just leaving the store and being open and not rushing, you know, not over scheduling, having time. Like, you know, it used to be like when I had the full-time job, corporate job, you know, you'd work all day and then you'd go to the doctor at lunchtime and you'd run errands on the way home. Now, like going to the doctor and running errands is sort of the day, you know? Depending on what, you know, where I am on with working on a book or whatever. But that's kind of what I'm doing now. And it's really enjoyable. You know, it's a whole new stage.
Yep.
So, yeah. And there's a lot of folks who I realize I may be the only person they speak to the entire day. You know, I mean, I kind of feel like, I feel less that it's happening to me and more that I'm happening to them in a way where I'm holding a door. And I may be the only person who holds a door for them the whole day. Or I say hello and they had 2 hours of struggle just to get out the door. and they needed someone to say hello to them. You know, I'm aware of the pain and the heaviness that people are carrying right now. And it's such a joy and a gift to have the time to spend the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So remind us too the significance of the duck. Remind us how this, just
I
how
know,
it
it's so
came
silly.
about.
Okay, yeah, I'm not this
Well,
big duck.
it's
Right, I know. I'm not this big duck person. You know, I've cautioned my family, like, no, I don't be starting with the duck gifts and the duck towels, and like, I'm not such a duck
That's so
person. But
funny.
I know, but I guess it all started because there was there's this sign along the river that says slow, slow duck crossing. And I've always referred to it as Slow Duck Crossing, this place I call Slow Duck Crossing. And I used to take people for bike rides to Slow Duck Crossing. And I had these little ducks, you know, these little ones. I had a whole pile of these. And I used to just leave them on the sign, you know, again, for passersby. And sometimes they would be there for like months, and sometimes people would take them, but I'd always bring new ones to replace whatever. So I showed this friend one on a bike ride. It was very innocent. And then she was in like Amsterdam or whatever, and she passed one of those duck stores. These A lot of cities have these duck stores, and she bought me a duck. And she's like, thinking of you. Fine. So she buys me this duck, and an orange bill at the time. And this was during COVID, you know, like maybe year two of COVID. And I tied him onto my handlebars. And I had noticed that people were really not like, you know, how people were kind of not interacting as much. People, you know, everyone had their headphones
Yeah.
on. You know, first there were the masks, then the headphones, and then just, I don't know, we had kind of gotten into this habit of really, there wasn't much interaction. So I would go out, I was already doing this sort of trust the journey philosophy, knowing things were going to happen when I went out, and suddenly things weren't happening anymore. I used to do this photo exhibit called Today's Nice Stranger. And I would meet people and I'd be like, you're today's nice stranger. And I'd take their photo, and it was lovely. I had like an Instagram feed about it. And like a month would go by. But I used to have like 3, 4 people a day. And now it's like a month was going by without me getting a new nice stranger. So I was like, what's going on here? So I strapped the duck onto my handlebars, like not intending anything. And all of a sudden, people started smiling. And they started talking to me again. And we get to red lights, and like, you know, the serious cyclists would pull up and they'd go, nice duck, you know? I'd be like, you go, you know. But so that's why I got to thinking when I was finishing up, I was doing a contract position with the CDC Foundation, working with the state of Alaska. I was running one of their communications projects, and the Department of Health. And that was ending, and people were like, what are you going to do next? And that's when I was kind of like, I'm kind of curious what would happen if I went across the country with this duck. You know, it's kind of like, this duck seems to be making people happier and friendlier. And so that was what I was testing. I mean, that was what started it. And then once I got that idea, I couldn't get it out of my head. And then I was reminded of this book. There is a book out of Ireland called Round Ireland with a Fridge. And it was my favorite book for years. I mean, it's still one of my favorite books. And it came out in like 2000 or something. And it's just full of heart, and it's full of love and laughter. And it's this British guy who traveled around the perimeter of Ireland with a refrigerator. And I guess like a college refrigerator. And he like made some drunken bet about this, and
Okay.
lost the bet, and then got this fridge and had to go do this. And again, things happen, and he meets
Right.
people. And I mean, that fridge ended up going surfing. I mean, and everyone was signing this thing. And so for all these years, I was always like, what is my fridge? What is my thing that I can just bring around, like an aquarium, a toaster? Like, what can you bring? You know. So when the duck idea came up, it was just kind of like, you know what? Let's try that. Let's just go around America with a duck and see what happens. So
I love it.
it was like coming home in lots of ways to then do around Ireland with a dog. So after having enjoyed the fridge journey so much. So
Excellent.
that was partly why Ireland, made such a good fit as the follow-up. So yeah, so that was, and he's, then I painted as Bill Green, for the Irish journey, but he's become like a really good little friend. He kind of goes everywhere with me now, and he's just, he's the only one who knows my story, like as far as like,
Every part of it.
We have a lot of inside jokes, Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about woofing before we get into the book, because I definitely want to talk about the specific experiences you had in Ireland and what the impetus of this trip was, like why this trip was so important, because there was obviously a lot of family pieces to this story.
Mm-hmm.
You woofed after not being able to do the Peace Corps because of COVID.
Yeah.
You woofed across America. And coming at, we did an interview about that, and I learned so much. And one of the most surprising things was the travel component that you encountered with it was tough to travel around, through America, by rail and bus, and some of the challenges you had it just surprised me. Like you wouldn't think of that in America. But then when we got into the discussion, I was like, yeah, I guess that is true. Coming out of the American trip, did you want to do woofing again? Because I kind of sense, when reading this book, that you were like, almost got a little frustrated with woofing. Like I just felt a little bit of frustration that I didn't feel in the first book.
Right.
So I'm just curious about that, the feelings around that from the first trip to the second trip.
Right.
And just remind everyone what woofing is.
Yeah. So woofing, it's been such a strange journey. So this whole journey's been 3 years long. So it was literally 3 years ago right now that I joined WOOF. And WOOF, it's WWOOF, and it stands for a couple different, like people say different things, but Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, or Working Worldwide on Organic Farms, WWOOF. It's been around since like the 70s, and it's in something like over 100 countries around the world. And it's where you barter your time and labor for accommodations and food and experiences and education on farms. Not just farms, but there's also farms, ranches, eco-spirituality centers, homesteads, nonprofits. There's really a wide range of hosts. They call them hosts. So in my American trip, as you know, I stayed at everything from, a Krishna temple in Utah that was the largest operator of, llama rentals in the state, to, the Dominican Sisters of Peace alpaca ranch in Kansas, homestead in Boulder, lavender farm in the high desert of California.
Your trip was so diverse, which probably was very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, and again, the reason I went on the whole journey, originally was, again, I was partly out of curiosity, but the curiosity was because I was reading such divisive and hateful things. And of course, those have gotten worse. And I really wanted to just go see for myself what was happening across the country, specifically in relation to farmers and their climate impacts. And, I know the Northeast. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from New York. And I've been living in Atlanta for over 30 years. And I don't know the West. So I heavied up, in west of the Mississippi. That's why I heavied up on my locations. I was at North Carolina at a goat farm, but the rest were to the west for that reason, so that I could learn more about what was happening. And so similarly in Ireland, I was interested in the climate impacts and things there. I mean, the part that gets hard as an older person who's, I have a home, I have gardens, I have a family, I have my own responsibilities. I'm used to being the leader of my own projects. It's hard and very humbling, to live with other folks and completely, just be a farmhand. It's very hard, to do that. It's exciting and you learn a lot, but it's hard. It's super hard. So I think what I was seeing by the end of that journey was that I'm getting ready for my next stage. I'm ready to step back into my own personal leadership situations. I've kind of learned what I needed to learn about myself and about the experiences that people are having. I'm not sure I'm going to woof again. When I was first starting this, it was kind of like, well, maybe I'll do this every year, like every October. Maybe I'll have a series of 10 books all over the world. Won't this be interesting? But I'm changing in a different way, and I'm moving in some different directions. And I think sometimes there there might have been a little bit of cognitive dissonance about that, where I have to allow myself to change in the way that I'm intended to, trusting the journey.
Right.
So yeah, I was definitely feeling. I mean, I felt that on the other journey too. I think in a way, this book, I don't know. There's a lot of things I didn't say in the last book, and I think you can read between the lines, and sometimes, but it's very challenging because you're living with people. You're in some really vulnerable circumstances, and you're with a lot of folks who are going through their own hard times. And so there's a definite question of privacy and respect and how much you really want to reveal about how difficult certain circumstances are. So I think maybe I just revealed a little bit more of it in this one about my personal experience, but that other trip was awfully hard too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't know if it's become more or if I just expressed it differently.
I felt you expressed it a little differently. I felt it more in this
Yeah.
book. I don't know, like I felt your uncomfortableness at times,
Hmm.
that situation of, I get what you mean. Like, when you're in your own home, especially as a woman, you're leading the home and
Hmm.
taking that back seat,
Yeah.
to a lot of things. It's just, and then you have all the other people involved, not just the
Yeah.
people whose property it is, other woofers potentially of other age groups
Right.
too. So I just I felt it in the
Yeah.
book,
Well, I'm glad. I
more
mean, I'm
so
glad
than
you
the first
did.
book.
Yeah, I'm glad you did because, again, anyone who's actually interested in woofing, I think it's important to really understand that there are a lot of dynamics that are happening. And I had amazingly good experiences in Ireland. So I just do want to say that. They
Oh,
were,
absolutely.
they were amazingly good and super generous and lovely hosts. And I learned a lot. And I also feel like there was a really strong emphasis on sort of the experiential education aspect of it, which was super nice. Um, but, I do see, I mean, I know you often hear, not often, but you will hear folks, often younger folks, who will say they had a really horrendous experience or they felt abused or taken advantage of or something like that while woofing. And I think those are avoidable circumstances. If you go in aware, that you have to establish your boundaries, you have to determine, what it is that works for you. Like, I know I need my bike rides every day. I know I need time to write. You know, if you go in with more of an understanding of like what mix of things create a healthy environment for your ability to sustain yourself and succeed. I mean, the hosts are more than happy to work with you. They want you to have a good, positive experience. So, I mean, I have heard stories about that. So, I would caution anyone and I know, and you're thinking about it.
Yes. Yes, I know. We talked about Italy
Yeah.
actually. So, yeah, but everything that I've learned from you, I'm putting into that thought
You're
process
taking
about
the.
when I'm looking at locations, when I'm looking
Mhm.
at the types of situations. I think I was looking at it back in March, and I think after reading your second book, especially,
Hmm.
I've been looking at it for the near future. I have a lot more criteria in going into
Hmm.
it.
What would you
And
think? What is your criteria?
well, just, I just the type of situation, I was kind of being a little more flexible about,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I'm open to like whatever kind of accommodations, whatever this. And now I'm being very specific. When I talk to the people too, it's like just how, even how they schedule with you and just
Hmm.
how if your time is meaningful to each other,
Hmm.
that's important sometimes if people are blowing
Yeah.
you off all the time. It just and just your dialogue with them, how is that dialogue? How accommodating are each of you to each other? I
Hmm.
mean, so it's just been an experience. I find, and I don't know if it's a dynamic of Italy, the responsiveness is not like you could send out requests to 15 farms and you hear back maybe from one. So it's
Hmm.
like it's tough. And then I worry, okay, if I'm just going over there for one farm for like 2 weeks or whatever, what if they cancel? Like you had
Right. I had a
situations.
couple of
So
them,
you had
right?
a few, but you had a few farms. So,
Yeah.
and we're able to, but I'm like, if you're going to a specific part of a country and have a flight going in,
Right.
there's just things I wasn't thinking about, when I was going into this. So, it's an interesting journey just to find the right
Right.
fit. That
Yeah.
piece of it, you just think you're going to go on the website and it's going to happen. That's definitely not the
And I think,
case.
I mean, we all maybe I don't want to generalize this, but I think in a way we all want to be like, oh yeah, I'm so easygoing, oh, I can make anything work. I mean, I've learned through it, like I want my own place.
Exactly.
I do not want to share a room, I can be flexible on bathrooms and this and that and whatever. I don't want to have, I want to have some free time, whatever. And people are different. Some people don't, I don't mind woofing alone. I actually like that. Some people really want there to be other woofers, and that changes the vibe. It changes, the experience as to. It depends what you're looking for. Some
Yep.
people want to be going out at night. That I wasn't looking for that. So yeah, you learn that you're maybe not as flexible as you thought, but that's not necessarily bad.
Exactly.
It just
Yeah, we
helps.
usually think that that's bad, but in
Right.
this situation, I guess I'm learning quickly that it's probably good to understand that and really look at
Yeah.
yourself and some of your
Right. Well, even
real,
when
the
I
real
came back,
important needs.
yeah, when I came back from the U.S. journey, I woofed at two locations here in Georgia while I was prepping for the Ireland trip, just to just
Yep.
stay in the game, and stay woof ready. So, and also I was trying to build some local relationships because again, I was thinking, well, maybe, just having these two farms that are not that far away, maybe that's what I'll do. Just every year, just pop up to the lavender farm and head over to this other
Right.
farm. And wouldn't that be nice? And they were both extremely good experiences. But when I got on the phone with, this was another lavender, this my second lavender farm. It was here on Lookout Mountain. And when I got on the phone with them, this lovely, lovely, lovely couple, post retirement. This is their encore career. They've got this agritourism thing. You would absolutely love. They'd be a great interview for you. You would love them. And right away, I'm just like, are there rodents in the airstream? you like, are there rodent droppings in the in the silverware drawer? And I'm like, they're like, what happened to you? And poor Bill, he's like, well, I mean, maybe it might be like once in a blue moon, there might be a rodent that gets in there, but we try really hard to. I'm like, no, 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 that's fine. That's not what I'm talking about because I had such horrendous experiences with that. But you learn to be like this. No, we're not living with rodents. you know. But again, and some people, a lot of these wolf places, you're camping, they're so again, I say to myself, it's not necessarily that there's anything wrong with the wolf host. It's just that could be a really good fit for somebody else,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
or
No.
somebody that has their own RV,
Yep.
or camper, and they're going around, they're not even really looking for accommodations. That opens up a whole other world of opportunities for them, that if they're just looking for a hookup on their water or whatever, and or they're tent camping or something like that, that changes their options greatly. I specifically liked the idea of farms that were nonprofits or somehow like multidimensional. Like that seemed to me, as opposed to ones that were more just someone who had like a personal family farm that needed a little help, you know. But that's good too. I mean, they're all
Yep.
good. They're all good, and it depends on your goals. Now, if you're someone who's looking to start your own homestead, that personal homestead may be the perfect fit for you.
Exactly. Yep.
So, but I liked more of a multidimensional experience.
Same here. A lot of the ones I'm looking at have an agritourism component.
Yeah, exactly.
Or have education. They're, have children's programs or adult programs. Yeah, so definitely, or some type of production, olive
Right.
production, olive oil,
Right. Yeah.
wine.
Well,
Yes.
and again, something like that, you want to be careful with the seasonality, because you could
Yes,
go to this place that, you're all excited about the olives, but it's not harvesting
exactly.
time.
It's
It's
not
not,
harvest or
nothing's
production.
happening.
Absolutely. No,
Right.
and again, that, that was a whole education,
Mhm.
found out that the olive harvest is mostly towards the end of October, beginning November, but then the climate also has had an impact on that. So like all these things that I
Right.
didn't know, but hey, now I know, so really
Right.
interesting. It's a whole journey to find the farm.
Yeah. And then again, and
So
then, and especially if you're going to Italy and then you want a mix, like I was, wanting to have them three that were different, and that I was different parts and I was learning different things. So yeah, when you're trying to find things that really complement each other.
yep,
But if you're clear on your goal and you're clear on your boundaries, I think those two things, and again, the goal can be loose, but you have some clear
yep,
goals as to where you're
yep,
heading. So, I mean, if you have a goal and you have your boundaries personally, and you make that clear, I think that makes a big difference.
yep.
I had very good communications, really, with all my hosts.
But I think that's great advice because I think going into this, you would think it's intuitive, but it isn't because it's kind of this, oh, this is so cool. And then,
Right.
when you get into it, there's a lot more to it. And I think your books have really, you know, like as someone who wants to potentially do this and experience this, I learned so much going into this now
Mm.
that hopefully I can avoid, avoid
Yeah.
some things,
Well, even about animals, I mean, whether there's animals or crops,
Yep.
those are two really different scenarios. And some
Yep.
some are just vegetables and fruits, and some are just animals. And
Yep.
what are the differences there? And also how that impacts your eating, your
Absolutely.
food. And then again, the seasonality.
Yep.
So
Well,
yeah.
that's something I spoke to a farmer this weekend, and he has some crops and olives, and then he has animals. And the time frame I would be looking in was completely focused on the animals and not the other stuff. So, that for me was not a good fit. It was disappointing. His farm was beautiful, but
Oh, that's
but
good.
it just wasn't a good fit. So,
Right.
but this is how you
That's good
learn.
that you were aware of that. And for me, it's like I do so much vegetable work in my regular daily life that the animals were really a gift for me.
Absolutely.
And that's actually the part of the whole thing that I miss the most, because I don't really know how I'm going to get my animal fix. I really don't. I don't know how I'm going to get my animal fix right now without woofing.
Well,
So that's the
trust
thing.
the journey. It'll
I
it'll
know.
come. So let's talk about Ireland.
Yeah.
Why Ireland? I know that's a big question.
Yeah.
And obviously, at the end of this, you're going to answer, you're going to let us know about the paperwork, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean the Ireland thing. So my grandparents on my mother's side are from Ireland. My grandfather fought in the War of Independence in 1921 and 2021, and the Civil War. After that, they have a Civil War immediately after that, and then he and my grandmother both emigrated in 1925 separately, 6 months apart. They didn't meet until they were in New York, and so yeah, I wasn't. I say right in the beginning, I wasn't this big Irish American person. I'm half of my family. My dad is Slovakian, and both his parents. Yep, I grew up in New York, and everyone, everyone's parents or grandparents were from somewhere else. So
Right.
I kind of need to say that because we just took that for granted. But then when you move somewhere else, I'm down here in Atlanta. I mean, people have been here for like hundreds of years. So, and that
That's
was
interesting.
that's very weird to me,
Yeah.
because everyone, like every single person I know, their parents or their grandparents were from somewhere else. So when I was growing up, so that was extremely normal. So yeah, I never really gave it all that much thought, and it really wasn't something I was looking to do. But with everything happening, I've been really wrestling with what could be like, what is it that I'm leaving as a legacy at this very challenging crossroads that we're at as humanity between politics and climate and all the other things that are happening.
Yeah.
So I was aware that you could apply for citizenship only for 2 generations. So it only works for 2 generations, and then it's done. And you also needed to apply before there were any grandchildren, like before I have grandchildren.
Oh,
So
really?
right,
That's interesting.
yeah, because once they're born, I would have had to have citizenship before they're born. So my kids, for instance, if I get citizenship, my kids can't take advantage of that. Like that doesn't apply to them. It would apply to any grandchildren that haven't been born yet. And so, again, I've got my dad and my stepmom and my mom are all but the dad and stepmom are 92 and my mom's 89. And so I see myself in this incredible, you know, there's a big scene about the George Washington Bridge, and I kind of feel that that's very symbolic for me. That I'm feeling like I'm bridging these and we're all in this. Many of us are in this position where the Gen Jones, Gen X, where we're bridging these generations, and a lot's happening. And so I decided to apply for citizenship. And my mom, interestingly, had started it back in like 1980. So, and then she hadn't finished. So she had a lot of the documents already. So we kind of had a head start on it. And it gave my mom and me an opportunity to collaborate at a time when we're on different sides of a lot of things right now. And it gave us a chance to work together really on a project. So with that in mind, again, I was, don't go on the Wolf Ireland site because you will just fall in love. I mean, like the Italy site, I'm sure it's like those sites are just beautiful and the farms are gorgeous and you want to go to all of them. And also, Ireland is the size of South Carolina. And I was like, I mean, after what I just went through across it ended up being 10,000 miles across that United States, 5 months. I was like, I could do this. I could actually do this. And it suddenly seemed important to me to actually like get my hands in the soil and to go. And like, I felt sort of a moral responsibility as well that if I were going to be applying for citizenship, I really needed to go and be part of the soil and experience and see what I would find along the way.
So the
It,
application, though, didn't require you to be in
no,
the country
it
for
doesn't
any period of
require
time. Okay.
require any residency or anything like that at all.
Okay.
So,
So this was more of a personal connection trip for you to
yeah, I
connect.
mean, I was kind of curious, and it wasn't a big, again, I had, did the DNA thing and all of that. I'm not that interested because I can't get the answers. I talk about this in the book. The
Yeah.
answers I really want, they're not names and dates, and, that's not what I'm looking for. What I want to know is, how did that feel to leave everything and come across that ocean, and get off at Ellis Island? What did that feel like? 25 years old. My grandmother was the same age as my daughter is now, my younger daughter. They were born 100 years apart. And I go, what does that, how do you do that? How do you leave everything you know? And what did you experience? Whatever. And then there's also the issue of intergenerational trauma, which we all have, through, and as your beautiful, gorgeous book, by the way, are you talking about this, The Resurrection of an Armenian Girl? I mean, what's so beautiful about this book that Jen co-wrote, um,
More
edited,
edited. Yeah.
yeah, is first of all, it's a story of an Armenian girl who fled during the death march, an Armenian genocide, um, who was the grandmother of a good friend of Jen's. And the interesting thing, of course, is that that generation didn't really talk to their children, our parents, but they're talking to the grandchildren.
Yes.
And so, of course, my grandparents died when I was 15 is when my last grandparent died. So we never had those conversations. And
Yep.
so, again, you think, what are we leaving for our grandchildren and their children, whatever? And I realized this was my only time to really capture not just the story, and I have some details in there, of course, but the feelings. Like, what does it feel like, to be carrying a family forward? What does it feel like to be wrestling with some of these old curses and breaking some of them,
Yep.
and wanting them to know that we tried, we did break some of them, we did move things forward. Each generation did. And that, I think it was also very healing for my mother to kind of go through a lot of that as well. And again, this book is so good. I put a review on Amazon. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's so extremely good. I couldn't put it down. But it also talks about the universality of these horrendous experiences that so many people have
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And I mean, men and women, but women in so many ways
Yeah.
just carry this heaviness and these burdens and end up, really never sharing or expressing it. So what a gift that she shared this with Steve.
Yeah.
And then you were able to help
Absolutely.
bring it to life.
I wanted to highlight one thing. When you wrote about meeting your brother, and going to Ellis Island, those moments, I'm sure, like those were really endearing moments. Like you
Mm.
were really reflecting on what it must have felt like. So when you just talked about, what did it feel like to come here? I know you and your brother were kind of having a moment there.
Yeah, we went. Well, first of all, so it's a 100th anniversary year this year of when my grandparents arrived. Okay. I didn't know that when I started working on this trip, on this journey. I had no idea that it was the 100th anniversary year. So that was wild. That was a trust the journey moment when I discovered that. And then on top of which, for years, if you look back, I have different blogs and whatever. If you look back on my blogs, every single March 4th, I post a blog post because way back when I worked at Turner Broadcasting, that's for whatever reason, at some point, March 4th became like my little battle cry day. March 4th, March 4th, that's March 4th. It was sort of like whatever. And then it just sort of became a thing, and every March 4th, I would just sort of like put my stake in the ground of, what this year's goals were, or like whatever it was. It was sort of my day to rally. And anyway, so I discovered in this journey that the day my grandmother arrived was March 4th, which, and it was wild. Even when you looked at the manifest, the ship manifest, she was due to arrive on March 3rd. and they crossed it out. And then so I looked it up, like you, with all the research you did in the back. I looked it up, and it turns out that March 3rd was such a bitterly cold day that the harbor was frozen. And so they had to sit. So on top of this whole incredible journey across the ocean, they had to then sit and wait another day to come in. And then it was March 4th when they came in. So this past March 4th. So my brother and I did ride the ferry on that actual day. And then I'm about to ride it again with my younger daughter. And that is going to be on the 100th anniversary of when my grandfather arrived. Wow. So that's coming up in just like 2 weeks. So I'm super excited about that. And I have a heart-shaped rock from Ireland that from my journey there, that I'm intending to put in New York Harbor on that day. So of course I'm like looking up, like, is it legal to throw a rock off? Which is not. So like, okay.
I was going to say, maybe you should look it up.
Right. The most fun about all of this kind of stuff is the stuff you end up Googling, the stuff you end up researching, even about by crossing over when I was thinking about going with the cargo crew.
Okay. Explain that one, because I was like, she's crazy. I even said that, and I would do almost anything. I'm so glad your husband actually talked you out of that.
It's so funny. Yeah, I kind of got this wild hair idea that I would travel by cargo ship, and I was like, if I could get a sort of like a woofing at sea job, but you're actually just working with the crew kind of thing. And I went down that road as far as I could before it ends up being a unionized situation. And I got saved from that scenario. But again, you find yourself, at the bottom of the hill in suburbia at 61 years old, can I volunteer on a cargo ship?
I love it though.
Right, exactly. I think the goal at this point is to be interesting to ourselves. That's what's important, is that if we can be interesting to ourselves, then we're continuing to feed our soul and we're leading ourselves closer to our destinies. So, and we know how that feels like. That's the funny thing. I know, we know when we're in that Gulf Stream, we know when we're in that flow. We know the feeling. That's the beauty of being older. We know we've had that feeling before and we know it. Right. So when it happens again, you're like, oh, hello, old friend. I remember you. With your passion of agriculture, it's so easy to tap into these earthy elements.
Yep.
Because Absolutely. That's what it is. It's all about the sensuality and the earthiness and the authenticity. So Absolutely. Our passions are well chosen. They're very close to things that we're going to feel very deeply.
Yep. So tell us about, highlight the journey. There were 3 farms. I know there was a switch at one point. Yeah. But just give us a highlight of the trip, because it was very diverse, even though it's a country the size of South Carolina.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I flew into Dublin. So the first thing you learn about Ireland is Dublin is, if you're traveling on public transportation. And by the way, if you ever search visiting Ireland, everyone's like, oh, rent a car. I'm like, okay, well, I did not do that. I did public transportation. It is very doable and significantly better than my U.S. experience was. And I backpacked in Europe when I was 21 years old, 10 countries. And I know, everyone's like, oh my gosh, but it's so much better. Their transportation is so much better. Yes. Probably is, but this was a significant improvement over my last experience. Nothing against the U.S. companies at all, but we have a very large country, and there's a lot of disinvestment that has made it hard. So if you've got one bus a day coming and it's late or it doesn't come, that creates a whole ripple effect of problems. But yeah, so I flew. So Dublin is it's sort of like a spoke and hub situation. So um, I flew into Dublin. I went down to what they call the sunny southeast, and I was at a thoroughbred farm. How cool is that, right?
Nice.
I know. It had a thoroughbred. I mean, with like foals, and I mean, it was ridiculously perfectly gorgeous. It was like the quintessential most lovely Irish farm and the most beautiful, wonderful people. And then from there, I went.
Was that Maura? Was that
Maura and Robert.
now I have to wait. I have to stop there for 1 second. Was that the one that you thought could be related in some way?
Yes,
Yes, you made that comment and then you never said anything. Like you said
I
it,
know.
and I was like, I know she did some research. I was like, did she do research on this?
No, well, that was near the end of the book. So
yes,
stories they move forward. So
I was really curious. You left me hanging on that one.
I know. Well, they were so wonderful. And then from there, I went as far north as you can go. And it's actually more northern than Northern Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it's in Donegal. I went to 2 farms in the county of Donegal, which is the considered sort of the wild. They also call it the forgotten part of Ireland because it's the only part of Ireland that doesn't have train service. Again, due to disinvestment for different reasons over the years, mostly having to do with the troubles and things with Northern Ireland. But this was as far north as possible. I think it's the farthest north, northern wolf location in Ireland, and it was in Greencastle. And that was a a homestead, really. It used to be a market farm, and then they've had some transition during COVID and things like that. But that's the one where they've had over 700 woofers, and they've been woofing since like the 1970s. So they were super cool and really knowledgeable. There's a lot to learn from them. But they had, the pigs and the donkeys and these beautiful Dexter cattle and this extraordinary and sheep. There was some lambs and fields and this beautiful, gorgeous location and this lovely little fishing village. I mean, it was just idyllic. And then from there, I went way over onto the West Coast to very southern part of Donegal. And that was to a CSA farm. And that was Ronan. And that CSA farm. And CSA is community supported agriculture. So he grows for the community. He has a subscriber base. And he had actually come back. He was living on a commune in Spain. And beforehand, he had been doing activist work with a nonprofit in London. And he came back just 2 years ago because he and his brother came back to kind of save the family farm. It was his uncle had been living there, and they were converting it all into this organic community supported space. And so they had 30 subscribers or so and 4 restaurants and a nonprofit that they provided. And they had a lot of community work days and kind of a little bit of a commune feel about the place. He brought some of the best elements of his experiences to it. And that was a very, very tiny, community as well there, really right on the Wild Atlantic Way. So super unique and a really wonderful, my favorite place to ride bikes, actually.
Which one? Yes, I remember. Which one was the one where you had your food cooking competitions with your peers?
It was so funny. Yeah, so it was me.
That sounded like so much fun.
It was crazy. We were so exhausted. And so again, here I am.
Your meals, by the way, sounded really delicious. I was hungry.
And theirs were equally, it was crazy. Yeah, because we had we had the blackboard and everyone was in charge of one lunch and one dinner a week. And people took it it just kept getting more and more, like the stakes kept rising. And it was fun because we all had the same stuff. And it wasn't, you had like pasta and grains and beans. You didn't have, you had basics, plus whatever was out in the garden and whatever you could imagine, whatever you could figure out. And you were whipping together like a full meal and dessert and the whole thing. And you were feeding, you know, 5 to 7 people, you know, on a whim in a kitchen that's not yours, you know. So, and you have like an hour to pull it together. So it was,
You want to name one of your meals? Because I was pretty impressed with the
oh gosh,
I don't know
I
the
can't even
page
think. I
number,
mean,
but I was like, wow.
I know it was like butternut
Yes.
squash with like carrot top pesto
Yes,
and yeah. I
it
mean,
was
it was
something,
just,
it
I
really sounded
know,
good. I was
yeah,
impressed.
yeah. It was. I mean, you know, again, it was basic stuff and really just trying to honor it. You know, it was super fun. But like we were eating it. You know, it was like 9:30 at night before we're done. You know, and then I'm up at like 6 out on the bike. You know, so, so that was busy. And, you know, again, I said earlier about having your boundaries and your this and your that. And at that particular place, I mean, I got out in the morning, which was important to me, but then it was just togetherness all day long. And, you know, that was a lot in trying to find time to write and whatever, and knowing when to just lean into things, you know, and just be like, okay, this is what's happening here, and we're just going to enjoy this. So yeah, it
Did
was
you
super.
did you find big cultural differences being in such diverse areas of Ireland?
Um, well, I mean, I always tried. I did, you know, I did a lot of research about things to be sensitive to. And I think I mentioned in the book about I have worked with refugees. We have a big, huge refugee resettlement city near us. And I've done a lot of community garden there, and I've done bike work with girls who are refugees. And so we had gone through what do they call it? Trauma informed volunteering training. And I
That's
think
interesting.
yeah, so you kind of learn what to be sensitive to in general, and there are skills that are applicable across cultures. And so I think the big difference from, I mean, I haven't traveled around Ireland as a tourist, so I don't know how it compares. But living with the communities and experiencing the communities, and I think this comes across in the book. I mean, you tell me, but I felt the trauma.
Yes, it definitely came across.
I felt it
More
very.
so, I've never, honestly, it was that was a real big education for me,
I think
reading all
most
of that.
people, right? Folks don't know that, you know, or they know it, but they don't, you know. But it's so palpable, and Ireland is such a place. It's so land based. The language is land based, and the identity is land based, and so it just it just palpates from the land. You feel it. You feel it so intensely, and so I don't. I think I would say I felt it more in the north and in the west. I mean, the north there was more of a political intensity because there's the very, I mean, they're right over the little inlet from Northern Ireland, and their history is very different. And in the west is where it was hit much harder with the Great Hunger, um, and you it, it's so barren of population in so many ways, and there are so many ruins and remnants, um, and knowing the history is heavy. So that is something I had to personally deal with. It's where bike rides were really extra important because it was very heavy, and also knowing that grandfather my grandparents were both part um, of that whole experience. You know, it was a lot. It was a lot to um, it was a lot to kind of carry. So I tried, you know, I tried to just listen, and I tried to, if folks wanted to talk about something, then I would participate in that. You know, I tried not to ask too many um, invasive questions. You know, and also, you know, yeah, I'm in a little bit of a hard position because folks know that I'm working on a book, and so I don't want anyone to feel like they're unsafe with me, that what they're going to share with me, I'm just going to blatantly, you
Right.
know, sensationalize or something. I tried, and that was again an issue with Round America with the Duck, because people did share some very, very like wonderfully beautiful stories and some really, really incredibly painful and moving stories. And some of them are in my books, where it's appropriate, but so many of them aren't. So that's one thing I'm kind of feeling now, is there's so much that I'm still carrying from the experience that I haven't. I almost need a new art form to share. And I took so many photos during the journey. So that's kind of something I'm thinking about moving forward, is, what's another way to express what I've experienced and share, what I've had the honor to witness, um, in a way that is holding people's stories sacred and not being invasive of their privacy. And I,
So
I think there's some
what are you
visual.
thinking?
I don't know. I really don't know, but I'm feeling that pull,
Okay.
because so many of the stories I'm still carrying, and again, they're things I don't feel comfortable
Mm.
sharing, but they're a lot.
Right.
They're a
Yep.
lot. I mean, you know how it is when you're farming and you're cooking together or whatever. You're talking.
Yep.
There's a lot of intimacy when you're talking to people. And I really love that. I love to have those conversations. And there's a lot of universality to the feelings that people are having right now, that I think are helpful for other people to hear in a form that's appropriate.
Let me ask you that. How reverse it? How, I guess, did they reflect back to you on their feelings about things going on in our country?
Yeah, I tried to stay off it. Like I didn't engage too much with what was happening here, except for the universal issues.
Right.
I mean, the things there's they're they're just basic universal things that are happening here. The need for peace, the need for climate improvement, um, the need
I
for
sometimes find
humanity.
when I talk to people from other countries, they're even more concerned than sometimes we were at that
Hmm.
time back when,
Yeah,
you were traveling. I think it's the level of concern is greater now, but they had more concern about even who was elected than,
yeah,
like it was interesting to hear that when I was interviewing some people globally. I
yeah,
was surprised at their level of concern.
yeah.
So,
I mean, it's definitely. I mean, we are all connected, and it affects everything. And I think one of the beauties that our passion is agriculture, is regenerative agriculture,
yeah,
is that, and that's important. That it's this idea of this life force that is continually feeding itself
yep,
and making things continually better. Um, I think the beauty of that is our passion, is it does give us a place to pour the feelings and the negativity and to turn it into something good. And so one of my philosophies is that, and this has been very helpful to me, is that anytime I hear bad news, I plant a seed. And
yes.
yeah,
I love that. I
and
remember
I
that. Yep.
Yeah, and I do, and it's like my garden is wild, and this has been a big year for seed planting.
Yes.
But I just do. I just try to channel the negativity into something positive. And the beauty of our passion is that we do have the opportunity to do that on a daily basis. And people who aren't involved with something regenerative really don't know what to do. That's a positive step forward. and
Right.
and I'm really grateful for this passion. I'm really, really grateful for it, and for the people who are doing it, who, you're talking with people all the time. It's so hard, and there's so many reasons why it's so hard, and it's more important than ever.
Yep.
And not just
Definitely.
not just for the food, but for the hope.
Yep. So did you get the paperwork back?
I'm still waiting.
You're still waiting.
Still waiting.
Wait,
I
how long
know.
has
I'm
it
not even going to
been?
be coy about it. Yeah,
Because you
so
left us off at the end of the book that you were
I know.
waiting.
I
And I
left
was like,
I left you hanging.
yes.
I'm still waiting. So yeah, I had to. They came back. They were. One of the documents was, I think it was my parents' marriage certificate. It was the church document and not the state document. And so
Oh,
then I had to go search that down and whatever. And then that, I mean, that could take another 6 months for that one thing. I mean, I've already sent it back and everything. So yeah, so we'll see what happens next, you know. But I am really, I'm working really hard at trying to learn the language. The Irish language is an endangered language. They were killed for speaking it for many, many years and kept it alive underground. And now there's been a renaissance of it. It is land based. And so it captures a lot of terminology that's related to the actual land. And it's a great way to, there's studies that show that folks who uh, preserve indigenous languages that are land based have a higher rate of conservation. And so it suddenly seems to me like this unexpected way to help save the world, in a way, is by learning indigenous languages. And I luckily have this opportunity to learn this indigenous language that is part of my heritage. So yeah, I've been doing that. And so,
yeah. And I heard you in Georgia, like you were taking two programs, weren't you? And both of them were free.
yeah, I mean, I think this is the thing is I'm like, the WOOF thing to me sort of opened the door to the fact that there's a lot of, I don't want this word as a negative, but I'm going to use it. Um, Hacks. You know, there are hacks that we can do to get access to different things and have different experiences and to be interesting to ourselves and to ultimately be more valuable to the world as a result
Right.
because we learn new skills and we stay in the game. And that becomes a challenge again as aging women. You know, how do we stay in the game in a way that's authentic and truly helpful and meaningful both to ourselves and to our legacies and our communities and whatever. So woofing was one of those things. Like, how cool! I get to do these cool things. I get to stay at these really interesting places. It costs nothing. It cost me less to do these experiences than it would have to stay home. So that's 3 years of traveling all over the place and having really wild experiences, and it cost me nothing. So that's super cool. And so I discovered that when you're over age 62, you can go back to any public university in the state of Georgia for free. And
That was great. Is that just a Georgia thing?
I don't know. I think a number of
I have
states
to
do
look
it.
into
So yeah,
that.
it's definitely worth
That's
checking
cool.
out. And so I just turned 62, but last year when I came back from Ireland, then I was thinking again, I was trying to learn this language. And I was thinking, okay, well, how am I going to learn this? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there's some. So I was doing Dublin City University has free online classes. And I was doing those. And then I was looking to see what else was happening. And then I discovered that there's an Irish studies program at Georgia Southern University, that there's a relationship. They're the only public university in the state, in the country, in the United States, that has their own campus in Ireland. And I was like, what? And so then, of course, I applied and they accepted me. And so I've had to wait because I just turned 62. And so I had to wait to turn 62 to get my tuition waiver and whatever. But now I've got it all done. And the funniest part is I'm in the process right now. It looks like I'm going to get credit for my books.
Oh, wow. That's terrific.
Because that's one thing that I'm required to take is an
Are these some
innovation.
more hacks?
I know it was like an innovative innovative studies research by semester, and that it's like a self-directed semester where you do some innovative research and then you end up with some kind of a deliverable. And I'm like, I kind of just did that, So we're in the process of seeing if I can get credit for that, for that program. And anyway, so I'm starting in January, and I'm go Eagles.
Good for you. That's terrific.
So yeah, it's a post-baccalaureate. It's the second bachelor's degree because I already have a bachelor's degree from Geneseo, where your daughter went.
Yep.
And
oh no, she graduated.
Oh, she graduated. Okay, so right,
early.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I'm just like whatever. So the hack part of this is not the degree. The hack part of it is being a student. Because what I discovered is by being a student at Georgia Southern, I'm online because they're over by Savannah. By being a student with a public university in the state of Georgia means I have access to all the libraries at all the public universities. And there's several of them here in Metro Atlanta, including 1 mile from my house. And I can there are new places I can ride my bike. There are new places I can go. There's, all kinds of, I also qualify for senior tickets to things. So I can decide whether sometimes it's over 65, but anything over 62 now. But it just opens more doors. It just opens more doors. And I think that's the trick right now is how do we keep doors when society's trying to close our doors? How do we keep opening them?
I love that.
How do we keep saying, wait a minute here? I see a way in here, and we don't know where that's going to go. But now by being a student, this also could provide me with opportunities for grants and scholarships and other opportunities that I'm not even aware of yet.
Yep.
And so I never did a semester abroad when I was younger. And they do have semesters abroad at their campus in Ireland. And maybe I'll go.
That's amazing. Well, there you go. Instead of woofing.
And already like next summer, I think I might go with my daughters. We may go for a week and may go back to Ronan's or one of the other, I may go to one of the farms for a week. But there's also Ronan's farm in particular is near what's called the Gaeltacht, which is there's a couple Irish first speaking areas in Ireland where they do adult language immersion classes. So I'm taking a class right now, an online class this fall, and then I'll start with the university in January. But next summer, I'm thinking of doing one of the immersion classes over there on the Wild Atlantic Way, and then maybe woof for a week, and then see my daughters and check out my college campus for a future semester abroad. And then you see what happens next, But it's not. Yeah. I don't know what 2 years from now looks like, and I don't need to know. And at the same time, I'm also juggling the elders, and I'm juggling family, and all of those things are moving pieces, right now. Yep. And we just don't need the answers, but we need the open doors.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. One thing when you were just talking about, what's a great thing about woofing is you've now connected with these 3 families in Ireland, and they become almost an extended family.
Yeah.
And so going back,
it's
like,
I know,
have these connections.
Right. It's really all I want to do is just go back to all 3 of them, but then there's still, there's other folks to meet and other places to go. That's the hard part. It's hard to close one door and open the next, when even my husband's like, wow, you have such a good such an intense experience each place you go. How do you leave? And I'm like, well, because I know the next place is going to be that way too, And I think that's again where the trust the journey philosophy comes in, because you just got to, and it's also this idea of, I have a higher power relationship, and I feel like my higher power is just a far better writer than I am. And you want the story to be good. You want to keep having chapters to turn, pages to turn, and new chapters to start and end. So I welcome those things, even when they don't seem to be positive sometimes, that there's going to be good. There's going to be good in that chapter, and it's going to lead to
Yep.
something good. So, and I don't, and again, it's hard. I don't know if you're seeing it yet, with your friends, but a lot of folks are settling in, and I don't think that's, we got a long, we have a whole nother, series of chapters.
Exactly. I'm in
Yeah.
agreement with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
I have
excited
to,
for you. When are you thinking of going?
well, the goal was potentially October, like the 10th through the 20th time frame, but
Mhm.
because my youngest who just went to college, her basketball season begins at the beginning of November, like games
Okay.
actually start. So I want to be present for as many as possible.
Right.
So I had this like small piece of time, like I had to be back by a certain time in October, but it still might happen. And coincidentally, I reconnected with um, someone related to Steve, actually.
Mhm.
Steve's dad just passed away, and from the book, um, and I reconnected with Steve's sister, and she has a house in Sicily, Italy. And I actually just saw her this
Mhm.
weekend. She met me in the Berkshires while I was doing my chocolate tasting. And so we spoke a lot. She's fluent in Italian, and she was telling me where, because one of the farms I was looking at happened to be Sicily. It was just a pure coincidence. I had no real designation. Like, I didn't want to be in a certain part of Italy. I was really just exploring. The only thing I did want to do is be closer to the water and not just completely in the middle, or have access to the water. And so I was looking all over. And then the farm that I actually talked to this weekend was in Sicily, literally like a, right by her. So it was just
Wow.
we're talking more, and she actually literally called some farms that she knew while I was there and talked to them about olive when olive harvest was happening.
Mhm.
So it was just, trust the journey. So
Yeah, but
I'm just allowing this whole thing to evolve. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't right now, that's okay too.
right.
I don't know what to predict in this because like you said, there's a lot of moving parts right now going on in my life, but I'm trusting the journey.
Yeah, well, and again, you're planting the seeds.
Yes.
I mean, all of a sudden
Yep.
now you know about olive harvest time, like something you
Yeah.
didn't, and it makes the day that much more interesting and exciting. And what's that saying? The world conspires in your favor when you
Yep.
put an intention out there.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
I can't wait to see what happens with that. And I
Yeah,
love
me
how
too.
your chocolate immersions have been so amazing. Actually, there's a museum here in Atlanta called the Museum of Design Atlanta, and they have a big chocolate exhibit right now.
Oh,
And
nice.
they did a local craft chocolate tasting
I
thing.
love it.
Yeah, so I was thinking about you. I went to it.
Oh,
And I was thinking
excellent.
about you and your amazing chocolate events. I guess you have two coming up still.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. I have two quick questions for you. First of all, this one's just I was really nervous for you when the logs came crashing down.
Yeah, the
Are
turf.
you
Yeah,
okay?
I
I
know.
just
I know. I had several occasions where the potential of getting really hurt was really high.
yeah, well, I was like, oh, I actually got really nervous. I was like, oh man. You seem to luck out in that scene.
Did. I did. That was a close one. Yeah, that was potentially really bad. Yeah. So that worked out, and I was again really grateful. That's not something on a tourist itinerary, to be stacking turf in a shed. So it's exciting there's so many climate implications and also heritage implications, to the use of the whole fuel thing was so interesting because the
Yeah.
ovens that they had, all of them, none of them were electric or gas. All of them had the spot where you either put wood or coal, um, or turf. and it was like, if you looked at the oven, it looked like you could open up and then maybe you're going to put cookies in there. Like there was a separate, but you open up and you're literally putting in wood or turf or coal. And then below it was another little thing that you open where the ashes would be. And this was normal. And I'd never seen that before. And again, I'm trying not to be like the idiot person who's never seen this before and acting like it's any kind of a big deal, but it kind of was a big deal to me. And I was so excited that between the 3 farms, I could see all 3 different types, plus they had solar and there was wind power. And just to see all of those examples, in these very rural locations in this very small country that was, it's an isolated country. So it's interesting how it's developed and how, its resources are so different, than especially when I was out west and here as well. So it's really, it's exciting. It's the benefit of travel, of course.
Yep.
It's irreplaceable to travel. So anyone watching or listening to this, if you have the opportunity to travel, especially as we get older, there's windows. We have windows during which we can actually do these things. And putting it off is not an option,
and tell me that.
Yeah. And it's not just your health, it's also the health of your elders or your children or whatever other folks that you may be caring for in the future that right now you may just have a window or you may see a window coming up when the kids go to college, whatever. And, these windows, they're small windows. So I don't know what my windows are going to look going forward, but and again, it's part of the urgency I felt. And, I knocked out two books in 3 years. And plus experientially, but there was an urgency to it. I felt a great urgency to try to get them done, and to take advantage of that window. So anyone who's thinking about these kinds of things, the power and the energy is in taking the next step. And the next step may be simply, what is the harvest time of olives? Checking, like that is a step, and that step starts to fuel you, as you know. It starts to give you that, then you ask the next question. Then you ask the next question. When you get to the question of volunteering on a cargo ship, it's time to stop, although it's not necessarily, because again, there are people doing such extreme things in this world.
Yeah.
And again, if you talk about doing some of these things and people think you're crazy or you're this or that, this is so minor compared to what real adventurers are doing. There are some really amazing people doing just really extreme things that this comes nowhere close to.
Yeah.
It's out of the mainstream for everyday, neighborhoods, but it's mild compared to what other people are doing.
That would have been a tough trip though. Especially at sea like that. But so in your book, I mean, I have so many highlights in here.
I appreciate that, Greta.
I figured, of course, I loved it. And one thing I love is you have a lot of messages in here, just real simple but deep messages. And so I just turned to a page and I just want to read one of them and then just have you comment. It kind of make this full circuit. It happened to be a page about the bike. It was page 143. And I'm just going to jump into the middle. It said, I felt so heard, so understood, and not because Ronan knew what it felt like to need to ride a bike, but because Ronan knew what it felt like to need in general. Note to self, never question someone when they voice a need, just help make it happen. Also note to self, don't deny your needs. I was fully aware that I had made this need clear months earlier on the video call. I hated having to advocate for it again, and I could have easily talked myself out of it, but it mattered. I mattered.
Yeah, that almost makes me teary hearing that, because that feeling is I can feel that feeling.
And I felt that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was a big growth for me between the books. People find different things hard. But there are times when I had to express, my need or my position on something, and that's hard. that was hard for me. So yeah, when you first started reading that, I immediately remember sitting in that room, um, with Ronan's little kickoff meeting. And he asked if anyone had anything they particularly needed. And I had just met these people. And of course, in my mind, I'm being like, just, get along,
That's exactly what I would be
be
feeling and doing.
easygoing, like, I mean, even on the first journey, I used to say, give it 4 days. Every time you go somewhere, 4 days. Because the other journey, I stayed at each place longer. So I was at every place
Okay.
from 3 to 5 weeks on the first journey. And at the second journey, I was at each place from like 1 to 2 weeks. It was a shorter journey. So the other place in the United States, I was like, 4 days, get the lay of the land, figure out the routine, and then start to, you know, make changes based on what works for you. But here it was like minute one, day one, and he says, "Does anyone have any needs?" I'm like, "I need a bike." So,
I love it.
so I'm going to call that progress.
I love it. Well, so what's on the agenda for next week, Patty?
Next week I
you
leave. Next week I leave on Amtrak. Next week I'm
okay.
heading up Amtrak, 19 hours. And that's so funny. People are like, oh my God, 19 hours. It takes so long. I'm like, not long enough. I just came back. I was out in LA not long ago. My older daughter lives in LA, and I took Amtrak back. It's the first time that I've taken it back since Round America with a Duck, because that's how that journey ended. I swooped across the Southwest and the
Yep.
South back to Atlanta, stop in New Orleans. And I just did it again. And never want to get off that train. I never want to get off the train. If I win, the big one, if I win the lotto, whatever it is, all I'm going to do is ride trains. I'm just going to like pack my folding bike, get on a train, and never get off again. It really is wonderful. So, I mean, if you could, there's all the issue. I mean, yeah, I ended up in New Orleans at 3 a.m. instead of 9, and then you have to lay over until then. I mean, there's issues with the transportation, but just heaven. So anyway, so it's 19 hours. It's a 2-hour flight from Atlanta to New York, but it's 19 hours on Amtrak, and that's the only way I've been traveling, because I love it so much. Love it. Love every minute of it. You get in your little seat, and you go through all these little charming towns, and at every town, every little station, there's hellos and goodbyes. I'm going to cry. You just sit there and you watch people hug and kiss and wave and run alongside the train. And it's just this reminder that we still have our humanity. We do. And if you travel at a pace that you can look humanity in the face, it restores your own humanity. And that's what this kind of travel does for me. It just, I don't even, I was looking, I'm looking at this trip for next summer, and I'm like, well, what about, I was trying to research on ChatGPT or whatever, how long does it take to go from here to here to here? I'm like, well, if you do that itinerary, you're going to waste a whole day on the bus. And I'm like, I actually want the day on the bus, like to get on that public bus and you just sit there, and it's always raining, and the rain is just running down the window, and there's like sheep, and then you're going in these little towns, and like, what more does anybody want? And again, the hellos and the goodbyes, and I mean, just the kindness of people. It's still there. It is still there. And of course, ducks help.
No, I think that's a good way to end this. Yeah, knowing that humanity exists and being able to see it in that way. It's
Yeah.
really important, especially right now. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, at a time when we're so closed off for each other, living with strangers, you know, sleeping next to someone you don't know on a train, I'd recommend it more than ever. More than ever.
Excellent. Thank you. This was
Thank
amazing.
you.
We
Thank
came
you
full
so
circle,
much. I
literally
know.
around the world.
I can't wait to hear about Italy. And I absolutely, anyone who hasn't read The Resurrection of an Armenian Girl, run out and read it again. I think it's so related to Round Ireland with the Duck in that, it is telling the stories of women, of history, and of the ongoing, legacy of the strength and perseverance of the human spirit.
Yeah.
And all of you listening, you have that too. We have it together and collectively. So, and Jen, thank you so much for really highlighting that when you're speaking to people. And I listened to your podcast. You're mentioned in the book.
I know. I was like so honored.
I know. But I listened to your podcast specifically at the second farm because we all had our podcasts and we were out there turning that huge potato field spade by spade, hour after hour, day after day, listening to our podcasts. And so you kept me incredible company in the very, very north of Ireland. And I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. That's awesome. Like I said, I was very honored. I was shocked. I was like, oh, wow, that's me.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope our Agri-Tourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agri-tourist.com. Until next time.